Hi, it's Michael Kerr here, presenting Small Business Banter. A healthy micro and small business sector means a successful economy and a more vibrant society. Small Business Banter is about helping regional business owners better prepare for current challenges, but also for the next stage of business success. I'm Michael Kerr, founder of Kerr Capital, advisors to business owners. Each week, I interview a fellow small business owner or an expert, and they share their stories, their lived experiences, the wins and the losses, and their best advice to help you, the listener, get the most you can from your own business. Small Business Banter is brought to you from the studios of 104.7 Gippsland FM and is heard across Australia on the Community Radio Network. And thanks also to Kerr Capital, supporters of the show. Welcome into another edition of Small Business Banter Community Radio and podcast. Really pleased today, Katrina Myers is joining me. Welcome in, Katrina.
Oh, thanks, Michael. Thank you for having me.
It's wonderful to have you on. In a moment, I'll let you just talk a little bit about yourself, and what we're chatting about though today is you run a family business, a significant family business, and my wife read a story about you and the family taking an epic 6-month trip overseas to far-flung places, and I was totally intrigued as to how you made that happen in a very positive way, but as a business owner also, what impact that had on the business. I mean, how did you prepare for it? What things happened unexpectedly along the way? How did you deal with it? So, because you and I were chatting offline, and we know that all small business owners, or most small business owners, are under constant pressure, and the idea of getting away from their business could really be a positive thing. So that's what we're going to talk about today. But anyway, can you give us a little bit of background on Katrina Myers?
I always love the question about, tell us about you, but I'll start, I'll try to make the short version for you, Michael. But
whatever it is.
Guess, yeah. Well, I'm a country girl from the very beginning. I actually grew up on this farm where I'm speaking to you from today, and the farm that Tim and I now manage.
Which is where?
So the farm is at Barham. So it's about 10 kilometres outside of the small little town of Barham on the Murray River. So that's in the very bottom part of New South Wales, top part of Victoria, in between Echuca and Swan Hill. Most people haven't heard of Barham, but you might have heard of Echuca or Swan Hill if you're from Victoria. So this is where I grew up, and I spent my childhood here on the farm, riding horses and doing all the sort of farm girl things. Then went away to boarding school and away to university. I actually studied my first degree. I studied agricultural science at university because that's what mum and dad did, and I had really no idea what I wanted to do at that point. So I thought I'd just do that. And then during that time, I actually was, sort of traveling back and forth to the farm, and my now husband Tim was working here as the local vet. So we met. Sort of in, I was only 20 actually, which now seems so young, but of course I thought I was so grown up at the time. And then so we sort of, started our relationship, and then went travelling and had a couple of years living in the UK. And then we sort of came back for a little while, had a bit more of a stint on each of our farms and working and doing all of that, got married, had another stint overseas in Bangkok. We lived in Bangkok for 12 months. And then and at the same time I was studying my master's. I did a master's of International Urban and Environmental Management, which is a real tongue twister, but basically covers everything from NRM, environmental management, to, global studies and not-for-profits and poverty and all sorts of things. It was very broad, and I loved it. And then we got pregnant while we were living in Bangkok. I got pregnant with our first baby, and we decided we wanted to come home. And we moved to the rural town of Young in New South Wales, and Tim joined a vet practice there because he'd worked there before, and it was a great practice, and the guys that owned it were awesome. But after about 2 years there, we sort of realised that we both wanted to be farmers, and we'd sort of just had this sort of, all of a sudden we had this revelation of, we always thought we'd just end up on a farm. And then we kind of realised, well, to afford to buy a farm around Young because the land prices there, even then,
Right.
15 years ago, were, crazy. So we thought, well, we've got two farms in the family. Tim was from a farm and I was from a farm. And so we looked at both of those and we sort of thought, well, the avocado farm at the time presented sort of more opportunities. There was more room to diversify and value add and do all that. Plus, Mum was kind of looking to move on. And we loved the Barham community. So it was a very massive decision at the time, but we decided to come back and run the farm, and that was 12 years ago. So
that's Barham Avocados as today.
That's right.
That's the business that you run. Okay.
Yes.
So what does that involve? Like you and Tim are both actively involved in the day-to-day management of the farm and the operations.
Yeah, so, well, I was sort of heavily involved for probably the first 5 years, but then I've kind of moved myself out of the day-to-day operations as much, and I've been working on, well, various things. Too many things probably, but children, we've now got 4 kids, and then also growing my own business, community work, doing all sorts of things like that. And then so Tim's really, really more in charge and has more of the hands-on operation side of things, and I'm really sort of strategic direction and kind of that overall bigger picture ideas woman, I would call myself. I'm always coming up with new ideas. So, yeah, that's kind of the roles we play now.
Yeah, but you talked about, value adding and that's, I guess, someone's you got to grow the fruit and but then you got to sell it. So there's, it's and if you want to develop a more profitable or premium product, you've got to, those are the things you got to undertake.
Mm-hmm.
So both active, and then family, and you've got a pretty extensive CV of local things, local organisations you're involved with, and obviously your training leads you to that. I think it's water management and land management. So yeah, a pretty full book. But you both have travel in your blood, by the sounds of it.
Yes.
But you're both business owners, and then so tell us about this idea. How did the idea come about to go away for 6 months?
Yeah, well, let's just say it was a long time in the planning. I think the idea really came about when we lived in Bangkok, and we sort of both thought, well, one day when we have kids, we'd love to take them traveling and give them a different experience and show them different cultures and do all of that. So it really started way back then. Yeah. And then probably, I think it was probably 5 years ago, we really started thinking, okay, well, how are we going to make this work? We really do want to do it, and it was really 5 years of planning and getting the systems in place and getting the people in place and thinking about how we're going to make this work. And then also kind of working out the timing with the kids as well. That was a big factor, is, their ages, especially with the spread of 4 kids, trying to figure out, well, when should we do this that's going to be the right timing for each of them. So
you developed an algorithm to work out what was the best 6 months.
Yes, that's exactly right. And we also we initially thought we'd go for 12 months. We said 6 to 12 months, but a couple of months in, we're like, I think 6 months will be long enough. So that was an interesting discovery as well. But yeah, it was a long time in the planning, that's for sure. So
in a way, could you call that exit? Exit planning is a term that gets commonly used, but I think mainly it's understood as I want to sell my business in 3 to 5 years' time. So what have I got to do now to make it more attractive, But and so the twist here, was the kind of planning you did maybe a bit like exit planning, and did it also have this outcome that it's making your business easier to run, whether you sell it or not, more flexible, less dependent on you and Tim?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And I would say that something that for us that we realised is we don't really ever want to have to sell the farm, but we also want to do lots of other incredible things. So it's really important to us, and it was really important to us, to get the farm in a position where we could leave it. And it's certainly showed us that we can do that now. And I think, if anything, going away really solidified for us even more. This is where we want to be. We really, really love the farm. We love this community. We love the life here, the lifestyle. Our whole. We're very attached to here now, but we also really want to be able to go and do other things. So the dream for us is really to have this as our base always, and then maybe succession if any of the kids want to get involved, all of that sort of stuff. But to have that flexibility to go do a bit of travel and come back. And that's always been really important to us. I think we both grew up with families and with parents who were very attached to their farms and hardly ever left. And so I think we both had that mission when we came back to the farm that we would never be like that, and we wanted to have more flexibility and freedom to do, to be able to leave.
Yeah, but come back.
Yes.
And so you've got, it's your community, but it's also a business that can underpin, what your other activities like travel are,
Mm-hmm.
So, and this is, it's a bit of a conundrum for me when, when I hear about exit planning, and I work with owners all the time on that. I've had a thought. I'm thinking about selling. What do I need to do to make it attractive and for a buyer? And I keep thinking there's a lot of this work. If you do that work really well, your business is you're in a better position to actually hold the business,
Mm-hmm.
because you've made it. You've put the systems in and you've done the whatever you might need to do. But and I think that's kind of what you've outlined there is a really is a real positive take on if we call it broadly exit planning. So what were some of the things that you kind of immediately went to work on in terms of a long-term plan to get ready?
Finding the right staff, the right manager was really the first thing. We knew we had to find someone that we could leave it with, but then who could, just take on that responsibility. We've been so, I wouldn't say lucky, because I think it's a lot of good management from Tim, but there probably is a bit of luck as well. But we've been blessed, I would say, with really good staff all the time. We've got one guy who's been here for 20 years who was here with Mum as well.
Right.
So he's just brilliant, but he had always been very honest and upfront in that he didn't want to have the full buck stops with me responsibility. But he knows the farm like the back of his hand and can do everything. So we then had to find someone who could take on that kind of really, decision-making, overall management role when we weren't here. So that was definitely the most important piece of the puzzle for us, to find that person. And we basically just headhunted.
Yeah.
And we didn't do it. We just got lucky in that it's actually turned out to be my cousin, his partner, Steph. She moved up here and she was working up here. And I said, Tim, I reckon Steph could be really good. I think she's the one that we need. And so we approached her, and she came on board, and she's just been absolutely incredible and has been amazing, and we wouldn't have been able to do it without her, that's for sure.
Yeah. Look, I'll talk about what else you might have done, but certainly this luck thing is, if you're kind of if you're out there trying to make something happen, for all the for golfers who can relate to. There was a really famous golfer who said that the more I practice, the luckier I get. I think it was, I don't know, maybe it was Gary Player or something. And I actually think that's, if you're scanning the horizon with a plan, that things do come into your focus. And serendipity maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Staff. Whether, regardless of what you're doing with your business, staying going, holding, getting good staff is absolutely paramount. So, was there anything else? Like, I think you talked about systems, procedures. Did you have in mind that like digital enablement, for example, so that when you're away you could? Because I'm assuming, you didn't take a total break from the business? There were still things that you did remotely, or were you able to escape?
Pretty much, we didn't do much apart from Tim was just sort of a sounding board, really. But even that, I mean, they were incredible. They like, some stuff really went wrong while we were away, and they just handled it. It was quite amazing. And they told us sort of afterwards.
Right.
So the pump broke down, and we had to sort that out. Like, pump's like one of our crucial things because we're an irrigation farm. So that was, but they just handled everything so well. But we do also have. So Tim could monitor the soil moisture, which is one of our most critical things while we're away. So he did keep an eye on that. So it's all through his phone. That's an app.
Yep.
The frost fans are all linked to an app. So there's things that he was definitely just keeping a check on to make sure that they were all looking okay. But it was very hands off, really. And we've got an excellent agronomist consultant who comes up regularly, and then Steph was kind of monitoring all of that as well. And it was really only sort of higher level sort of strategic things looking forward to sort of harvest and stuff like that we were being involved with, and kind of planning for that, but really, really hands off in the day to day. And they just did it all without us. I think that was the biggest surprise. It was like, oh, they don't really need us at all.
Yeah, which is kind of like, maybe it's it's more like planning for your own fears of letting go, perhaps, but which is obviously got to be a part of it if you're bringing in a team, or and saying, well, I want you to be in charge. So I mean, when the pump breaks, did you enable them to go and spend money that, if it was mission critical? Like, that's a system thing, right, or a procedure thing?
And that was talked about. There was definitely talked about, and yes, absolutely. And when it comes to that, okay, we've got to replace the pump. But I think that you just touched on is a big part of it. It's that ability to let go, and that is something, as I said, sort of Tim's very much the operations manager now, and he's just really good at delegating. He doesn't micromanage, and he's very good at just letting people have a go at things. And when I was talking to him about this leading up to this podcast, I said, what else do you think? And he said, well, it's actually also not covering up mistakes. It's calling out mistakes when they happen and, highlighting to people and saying, okay, this is what happened, this is how we correct it, rather than just like, oh, well, I'll just go and fix that up. In the moment, he said he's done a lot of that. And I think he's just very good at, he's sort of not driven by his ego of like, well, I'm the only person that can do this. He's just from the get-go been very good at empowering his people that work with him to do the work,
Yeah, you maybe start to think of that as culture, of a business and people. There's a way of doing things, and Look, and on today's edition of Small Business Banter Community Radio and Podcast, talking with Katrina Myers from Barham Avocados about the epic adventure, which I'm hoping will inspire us, plenty of others to take a big leap. Particularly, whether you've travelled before or you haven't travelled, it's an incredible. I think it's an aspiration for a lot of people, and I just, not just particularly for business owners, but I feel that a lot of owners I deal with feel like they can't, like they're trapped, or they just committed. All these other emotions that go with it, but they're so. We're going to try and maybe expose some ways or talk about some ways that they can rethink that. So, you took the trip. You dealt with things, as and when they came up, or in fact left it for the team to deal with. And you made an interesting comment, something to the effect that, it was a revelation, that you could get away, and that things just got, the team got on with it. Was that the right take on what you said?
Well, it was more just how well they coped without us, and how they didn't really need us, and how well everything went without us. And like we got home and the place just looks amazing. Everything looks incredible. Nothing has sort of dropped at all, really. So I think that for us was the biggest surprise. Was like, oh yeah, okay. I mean, because it's always a risk when you go and do something like this. Of, oh my God, is it going to be okay?
Yeah,
and it really was. And I think so. I think that's actually been the biggest surprise, is everything was great without us. And that was great. What a wonderful thing to come home to, knowing that everything was okay and they've handled it really well. Yeah.
Do you think, from the staff's point of view, what do you think they thought of the experience? Was it positive for them in that they got this responsibility that they could run the operation, or did it change them?
Yeah, I think yes. And I think because we'd planned it for so long, they knew it was happening for so long, they had a lot of time to prepare for it mentally, and they knew it was happening.
Yeah.
I think really great learning and awesome opportunity for Steph particularly. I mean, Steph's only like 33 or something. She's quite young. She had that opportunity to kind of manage something. They've actually bought their own farm as well. So I think it gave her a really great experience. I think there was definitely times it was very challenging for them, but Steph also manages stress very well, so she doesn't kind of tell you if she is stressed.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was definitely, I think, a lot of learnings for them, and I and I think always, one of the great things we can do is actually empower our staff more to have more responsibility. And I remember learning that very early on in our leadership experience or our business experience was, in fact, when you give them that autonomy, they rise to the challenge, and it's really great if you can do that more. And I think we definitely saw that with our staff. They've been wonderful.
Yeah, and I think maybe it's a combination of empowerment of the team, and then that whatever it takes for the owners, the directors, to be able to handball off and and trust, and so you realised 2 months in it was 6 months going to be enough, but you also said you're looking to do it again, so it must have been something that was net pretty fine.
Oh, yeah. Look, it's incredible. I mean, I guess the biggest challenge is just traveling with 4 kids. Of course, when I say to everyone, they're like, oh, yeah, well, a holiday's hard. 2-week holiday's hard.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. It is, So that was probably the biggest challenge. And then also financially, because what happened, it was quite a tricky time because it was all during COVID. And so right up until sort of 2 months before we left, we weren't really even sure exactly where we were going to go, where we were allowed to go. We'd still been tossing around where we're going to go around Australia, where we're going to go overseas, so there was lots of decision-making that happened in that last, very last little while. So that made it challenging.
Yeah, you had a 5-year plan, call it a 5-year plan, and then even right up until the very last minute, you're not sure exactly where you're going to go on the plane.
Exactly, that's exactly right. So it was really interesting, and we'd always wanted to go actually sailing. One of the big things we wanted to do was sailing, but then realised, well, we can't afford to do that yet because we just really can't afford a boat. So there was lots of doubt. Yes, we knew we were taking this time off. We just had to decide where we were going, and so then I think we sort of started off in Thailand, and we did a couple of months in Thailand, and we sort of had the attitude of, all right, well, we'll go somewhere. We'll start there because we had some friends that we'd known from living in Bangkok that were living on Koh Samui, and they said, why don't you come here? So we thought, all right, let's go there, and then we'll just throw it to the wind and see, what happens, what sort of arises from that, what opportunities come. And then the opportunity came to go to Portugal for this pop-up program with the Cordia Collective, a travelling family, actually. They run these kind of programs in different countries that they go to, and you can join with them, and they kind of, teach you about the local area, tell you all the good spots to go. And there was also a school program with it, and an outdoor school program. And so we thought, oh, well, that sounds awesome. Let's do that. And by this stage, we were like, maybe 6 months is long enough, and, maybe it'd be good to be home in time for harvest. And if we go to Europe, it's going to cost us a lot more money. So probably towards the end of Portugal, we were kind of ready to come home. We kind of felt like we'd done enough by then. It was really interesting, actually, for that. I think just the dynamics of the family and the kids and all of that sort of thing. But we thought, well, we may as well wait until, the end of term 2, and then the kids will come home for the school holidays, and the kids can start fresh for term 3. So we then went on and did a bit of time. We went and visited our friends in the UK, which was lovely. We've got lots of friends that live there. And then we had a few weeks in Greece. We went with that travelling family to a small island called Tinos, which was off the beaten track a bit. And it's interesting because all the places that we went to were sort of quite rural, quite sort of not the big touristy sort of areas, and felt very local. So it was really great to have that experience of actually living in places for longer periods and getting to the heart of it. So it was good.
Yeah, maybe, and that it's a bit of a parallel with your own community, at home, right? It's more of that. Yeah. So in terms of, this idea that of getting away from your business, but having the business continue to run, support, you want to do further holidays. How would you be encouraging of other owners? What would you suggest they do to kind of firstly open up this idea that maybe there's a way to make a break from the business that doesn't mean you follow the traditional path of just work your butt off and then sell and then go and have a holiday? I mean, that's fine, but what we're talking about here is a different model where it's better for the business in that you do that kind of planning, take a break, come back to it, and you keep the business long term. And the exit planning, in inverted commas, that you do is actually just about making the business better. So we could call it something else, but it enables you as an owner, or you and Tim as owners, and the family who understand that you're running a business, that it doesn't have to be absolutely all in.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a long question, but how would you encourage owners to think about it and then start to plan for it?
So I think it comes back to thinking about, well, what's your goals? What are your values? What do you kind of have as your big picture? Where do you want to be in 20 years' time? I think a lot of people don't really think about that longer term and what they really want out of life. There's so much. I've done so much in the personal development space, and Bronnie Ware's book about the 12 regrets of the dying and all of that stuff. And I think people kind of, you get stuck in that rat race, or you get stuck in the grind, and then one day you wake up and you think, oh, what have I done with my life? So I think it's about stopping and really taking the time to think about, well, what do I really want out of life? What are my goals? What are my values and ours as a family and all that sort of stuff? And just having a really good think about that for a start. And I think for us, I lost my dad very young. Like, my father died when I was really young. And so I've kind of always had a little bit of that attitude. You've sort of got to live life in the moment, and don't put everything off till one day.
Yeah.
And I think it's really easy to do that because it's very easy to stay safe. And there is a lot of discomfort in doing what we did, and there's a lot of challenge, and it's breaking away from the norm. And, financially, there'll be some repercussions long term, I'm sure, or, mid-term, hopefully not long term. And so there's, challenges with all of that as well. But, for us, and I think my advice to anyone would be, just really think about what would you regret in 20 years' time, and what are you putting off that you think will happen one day that you could actually do now? And is it just because it's all too hard? Because everything's hard, but you've just got to make some choices and think about what's really priority for you, and what will you be most proud of, and what will you regret in 10, 20, 30 years' time?
Yeah. Yeah. And like that stoppings can be hard, right? When you're in the maelstrom of running a business. But, and it's certainly, it's not something that, you didn't just kind of go, you couldn't, right? You have to systematically plan. And again, the parallel that I think is really important is that in planning to do something like that, you're making the business more sustainable, better, because, and it's there to support you, and it's not a something that you work your butt off at, take the money maybe if you can sell it and then go and have a holiday. I mean, that's an okay. I'm not criticizing that, but just trying to open up the possibility there are other ways, but it does start with that stopping and thinking about what's really important. And so were you surprised? What were your pleasant surprises and other surprises about being away from the business and what happened in the business?
Yes. Well, as I said, I think the biggest surprise, but it was all fine without us, and just how well they did cope, and, how little they did actually need us. That was the biggest surprise, I think, for Tim and myself, just to realise that, it all went swimmingly, mostly. I mean, probably really that they just coped. They managed. Anything that did, kind of cause a problem, they just managed to figure it out themselves. And, when you're not here, that they do figure it out. So that was probably the biggest surprise. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm interested in this. I was doing a little bit of research on business locums. So in the medical profession, you can have someone come in and take a break. So I can't see why. I'm going to explore this a bit further. The idea that, and you might call, and it happens a little bit in financial services, and I haven't dug around too much, but this idea that it might be existing staff. You might not actually need anybody different to come in, and maybe there's compromises, and you just do a little. Have a little bit of involvement remotely, but so I'm really keen to kind of explore and see what other options there are for owners to step out, of the day-to-day for the reasons of making the business maybe a little bit more effective and also enabling them more time. So that's I'll come back to that.
Yeah, well, our local post office actually does it. I know they have someone that comes into their post office and allows them to go away, and they just come in for that. Yeah, just like a locum, really, and it works really well for them.
Indeed, same with our local post office, and I keep meaning to chat about them. But did you this the sounds like the key decision point, was driven by, family, values, but you stepped away, so we're going to do this. Do you get, for others who are, owners that are, maybe struggling to step away, what, do you use coaches? Do you use, other advisors to help navigate some of those kinds of, decisions that are beyond just the day-to-day running of the business?
Yeah, so I've had more coaches and done more courses and more personal development than your average person, that's for sure. I'm kind of, I'm sort of addicted to self-development work, if anything, and
right.
I love it, absolutely love it. And my business is sort of built around, trying to support rural people to live their best lives and, thrive and have good well-being. And I teach meditation and all of that. So, because I was actually going to say, I think that's one of the things that we don't place enough value on is the well-being and the ability of the owners of the business to thrive. And if you're just stuck in that grind in the day-to-day and you're working away and you're not taking that time out of the business and everything, it's not good for you as a business owner necessarily. Some people can manage it, but a lot of people really, it does affect their well-being. And if you don't leave your business, if you can't leave it, it can be very draining and you get burnout and all those sort of things and a lot of stress. And so, I think it's very important to be able to leave the business, not necessarily for 6 months, but it is something that we don't sort of highlight enough, I think.
But definitely think about options other than just taking time when and if you sell the business down the line. And there's a lot of assumptions that go into that, right? The number of businesses that are for sale at any one time, and look, exit planning as an industry does a really good job, and there are owners that are it's the right thing for them, and it can pay dividends, but it seems it's always tied to this sort of magical exit at some point, and I don't think they all, there's so many other things that come into play, before, setting a date. I'm going to be out of here in 5 years with a sale at, X dollars. So,
Definitely.
all sorts of things happen. And all right. Look, I was really keen just to tie this up. It's been a really excellent chat on something that I don't think gets a lot of coverage, and it's not easy to step away from your business. But I think we're both agreeing that you can. It takes a lot of planning. It's kind of it will be rooted in decisions or thinking about not just the business. Whatever else, family, community, all these other factors that come into it. If it's possible to do it well, and your business is kind of more like a forever business, and it sounds a bit hippie, but you can come and go a bit more, and it'll still support your your lifestyle, because it's pretty hard to do that with a job when you've got 4 weeks a year.
Definitely, that's right. Yeah, I think there's so much that we all take for granted sometimes, but there's a lot of wonderful things that, especially, I see a lot of farmers too really taking that for granted, being your business owner, and there's lots and lots of benefits to it. But you do also have to have that kind of level of self-awareness and that ability to be reflective about it, and actually, because it is easy just to get caught up in it all and not stop yourself from doing too much, and not stop yourself from getting burnout and all of those things. But you've got to take that time to go, okay, hang on, how can I also make this work for me and really, benefit from having my own business as well?
Yeah. Look, there's so much of, it's another discussion, but there's so much of identity tied up in businesses.
Yes.
And ownership of businesses, and it's when your business is your identity, and everybody has a different set of priorities and values, and I've dealt with a lot of owners over the years where without that business, this is kind of counter to what I'm saying, but for whatever reason, after 30 years, there are some that just can't wait to get out and and may not, and there are others who are really quite, talk about not getting enough money for the business, I'll hang on to it. But really, it's about there's nothing else, beyond the business, and so that's it's kind of sad, but a reality.
Well, yeah, and I think that was really the thing that's probably, I guess, inspired me, but in a sad way. Like, that's what happened to my dad. I ended up actually losing Dad to suicide, and he was going to be selling the farm. Like that was the thing. And it's exactly what you're saying. His whole identity was attached to being a farmer, and he didn't know any other way. And so I think that's what's sort of inspired in some ways and driven the decisions that Tim and I have made as business owners, because we've made a very big point and made a very big effort not to be just our farm, and to know that we are not just our business, and we're, all of those sort of things. And so I absolutely agree with you. I think it's so important for us as business owners to know that we're awesome without our businesses, and we're wonderful people, and we are who we are. And if our business fails, we are not failures.
Yeah.
And that, and I think that's just such an important point for everybody. And yeah, set it up so that you do still have that flexibility, and you can go and do other things, and you can be okay. And I think that's a really important point.
Yeah, it's really, it's I know it's rusted on with some people, and and so it's got such a delicate, conversation and pathway through from where that is your identity. So,
Absolutely.
But look, and if somebody, there are fantastic services available, like Lifeline and other organisations that you just got to reach out and talk to someone. If it's not a business coach or business advisor, talk to Beyond Blue or Lifeline, because that's there's support there for you if you're feeling that way.
Yeah, and never be afraid to ask for help. That's a big thing. That's another thing actually that I think has helped us in business, is we are always constantly asking mentors and other people for advice and help, and we're not afraid to ask for help ever. It's a huge part of, like, I love asking for help and support. It's been a big part of our success, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, look, that's an area. Look, the whole advisory board sector is growing explosively. We've had a previous episode. We had someone talk about advisory boards, and it's they don't have to be formal and structured, but it's at its core, it's about talking to others about your business and about how it affects you, and you can't you can do it on your own for a while, but at some point. Unless you're, absolutely extraordinary, and it's gonna come back, and it's gonna bite a little bit, and and if it doesn't bite, you're gonna miss out on some good opportunities like you and Tim have, kind of planned and executed. So
exactly.
Well done on that.
Yep.
All right. So thanks so much for your time, Katrina. Do you want? I know you've got ripping avocados for sale. So how do you get, like, do you have an online part of your business?
We've tried lots of different things, and in the past we've had an online side of the business. We're still in debate about whether we crank it up again for this harvest. It's an ongoing discussion as part of our business. Is the best marketing options, and it's very challenging, especially at the moment because avocado prices are woeful. And there's an oversupply. So what I would say is get out there and buy avocados. To anyone who's listening, please buy avocados. But yeah, and I will. Yeah, if they do go online for sale, they'll be through the Barham Avocados website.
Okay. Do you want to shout that out? And are you okay if people wanted to just contact you generally about your incredible trip?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm always happy to chat about it and talk about it. And
love.
And because I do have such a passion for, seeing people thrive, I think it's really important to, look at, as you say, the possibilities and not feel like you're stuck in anything, and that there's options and all of that. So I'm definitely happy to talk to people. And our website is barhamavocados.com.au. And I'm also on Instagram as Katrina Myers, and also Barham Avocados. So
yeah, we'll certainly put up that information in the show notes when it goes out. And but I think we've just we've talked about another take on in inverted commas business exit. So well done to you both on that, and it's been a great chat. Thank you very much for your time.
My pleasure, Michael. I've really enjoyed it, actually. I'm happy to chat about this stuff anytime, so thank you for having me on.
All the best.
Thank you.
So that's all for today's episode of Small Business Banter. I continue to be inspired, bringing you small business experts and other small business owners and hearing their stories. If you want to listen to any past episode, jump onto your podcast platform of choice and search Small Business Banter. There you will find a diverse and fascinating collection of small business owners and experts openly discussing and sharing their experiences. For any of the links, resources, or information we've talked about on the show today, or to contact me, please head over to smallbusinessbanter.com, or you can find us on Facebook and Instagram. And it would be great to have you tune in the same time next week for another episode of Small Business Banter.